computer. That should be visible now. Don't think you're live. Go ahead, Tom.
All right, it looks like we are back. I'm just waiting to make sure that we're back. It's like Groundhog Day, right? We were just here, and now we're going to start all over again, except we're not going to have my introduction again or Sam's words of welcome or his talk. We're hopefully going to be able to continue with the Esai. I think we're good to go. All right. We are good to go again. See, we took a couple of deep breaths and eased our way into the moment. We're not going to let anything get us down or bother us, right? The technology is here to make our lives easier, and we thank God that we have this technology, even though it makes us have to take our time a little bit and make sure that we got everything right. We are on page 8 as the choir gets ready for Shir Lamalot, Esa Enai El Heharim. Even in the darkest times, a single candle beats back the dark and makes us aware of the beauty around us. May this light show us a new year filled with blessings. I'm going to ask Sam to come forward as we light the Shabbos and Yom Tov candles.
Thank you.
Source of blessing, eternal our God, who filled the universe with majestic might, teaching us holiness through sacred obligations, giving the mitzvah of bringing life on Shabbat and on Shabbat and Rosh Hashanah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher yishanu v'yishpad v'zivanu v'chalit ner shel Shabbat Yom Tov.
And we continue with the Shehechianu, thanking God for allowing us to reach this time. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu la'azman hazeh. This autumn night, the shades of darkness in the sky are signs of Earth's turning, the fleeting ways of nature. And we, drawn together in this holy house, filled with New Year's hope and light, turn our hearts toward you in prayer, in worship, seeking life's essence. In the presence of your love, we feel the nearness of those who bless our lives, even in death. Precious memories of their love restore our strength, renew our faith in life's goodness. We acknowledge with gratitude the life you have given us, the bounty that sustains us, your comfort in sickness and sorrow, your compassion in valleys of despair. God of years, God of eternity, bless us now and always. Bless our homes and our families. Be with us in our dreams and in our hopes. Be with us through these days of awe as we search our souls within and seek the lasting shelter of your love. As it's Shabbat, part of the early service, the part that we're in right now, will include some Shabbat songs, and one of which this evening is Shalom Aleichem, and our choir will be leading us, and you can find Shalom Aleichem on page 14. Page 14, Shalom Aleichem, we welcome the angels who come to spend this Shabbat and Rosh Hashanah with us.
Shalom Aleichem, Malkei Hasharetz, Malkei Yod, Melech, Malkei Malachim HaKadosh, Baruch Hu. Malkei Shalom, Malkei Hashalom, Malkei Yod.
And on the top of page 15, Tiku b'chodesh shofar, b'keser leyom chagenu, ki choch liYisrael hu mishpat leElohei Yaakov. At the new moon, at the full moon, for our feast day, sound the shofar, for that is the law of Israel, the way of the God of Jacob. We're now going to turn to page 17, and I'll ask Scott to join me on the Amud here on the Bima for Hineni, or as it's pronounced in the prayer, Hineni is what Abraham says. It's Hineni, and it's the prayer leader asking God to hear our prayers. It's chanted with a sense of awe and humility as we are standing before God on the high holidays, asking God to hear our prayer. At this time, it's traditional to welcome the new year, to count the year. And we're on page 19. Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu, yehi ratzon shenizkeh livchotecha, bishnat chameshet alafim u'sheva me'ot v'shmonim v'achat. Elohei olam, barech otanu ve'et kol beit Yisrael b'chidush yameinu, b'simcha v'shalom, v'nechama u'va'ometz lev, b'chilutz atzamot u'va'ruach etana. Yehi free sefatenu mikubal v'ratsui milfanecha, Bifros Hashanah Chadasha La'ad Modim Anachnu Lach Al Matanat HaChayim. Our God and God of our ancestors, may we know your blessings in the year 5781. Eternal One, bless us and the whole house of Israel with renewed life, happiness and peace, comfort and courage, resilience and strength. May the words of our heart be acceptable to you in the new year that stretches before us, for we are forever grateful for the gift of life. We're going to continue on page 20 with Baruch Hu. And I'll ask those who are comfortable or those who are able to stand for Baruch Hu. You may be seated. Let's read together on the bottom of page 22. Blessed are you, Adonai. Your great name fills the universe with majestic might. Your word creates twilight and dusk as your wisdom opens the gates of night. Your discernment separates the changing seasons and causes the passages of time. The stars arrayed across the sky reveal your design. You roll out the cycle of darkness and light, shaping day and night. You sweep away day and carry the world into nightfall, setting day apart from nighttime. You are God of all we can perceive and all that is beyond our perception. Living God, living eternal God, be our sovereign until the end of time. El Chai v'Kayam, Tamid Yimloch Aleinu Leolam Vahed. Baruch Atah Adonai, Ha'ma'ariv Aravim. And in honor of Shabbat, let's use our regular tune for Ahavat Olam. You'll find that on page 24, and that will lead us into the Shema. Ahavat Olam Beit Yisrael Amcha Ahavta Torah u'mitzvot chukim u'mishpatim otanu limadeta Al kein Adonai Eloheinu b'shochbeinu uvkumeinu nasiach b'chukecha v'nismach b'divrei Toratecha uv'mitzvotecha le'olam vahed. Ki chem chayenu v'yorech yameinu v'yorech yameinu uvehem nehege yomam v'layla yomam v'layla v'ahavatecha tasir mimenu li'olamim Baruch atah Adonai Ohev Amo Yisrael. You'll find the Shema on page 26. continue on page 28 with V'ahavta. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol miodecha v'hayu advarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom alavavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'veitecha uvlektecha v'derech uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha ukshartam liot al yadecha v'hayu latotafot beineinecha uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha. Leman tizkeruhu v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'hitem kedoshim le'elohechem. Ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem le'Elohim. Ani Adonai Elohechem. Adonai Elohechem emet. Page 32 in the English, let's read together in the middle of the page. True and faith, these are fundamental to our existence. God alone is their source, and we are Israel, people of God. Our sovereign saves us from tyranny, redeems us from its violence through countless wonders, from its brutality through great feats beyond measure. We are Israel, a people of God, the giver of life, who would not let our feet give way, the maker of miracles for us against Pharaoh, of signs and portents in the land of Egypt, the one who brought our people Israel from its midst to enduring freedom. We're in the middle of page 34 as the choir comes in with Mi Chamocha. V'nehemar kifad Adonai et Yaakov ugalo miet chazak mimenu Baruch atah Adonai Ga'al Yisrael. As it is written, Adonai will save Jacob and redeem him from one stronger than himself. We praise you, eternal power, the one who redeemed Israel. Top of page 36, one of the most beautiful prayers in the Machzor or the Siddur, the regular prayer book for that matter, Hashkivenu, asking God to watch over us as we sleep. Blessed One, you spread over us a canopy of peace, a shelter of shalom over all Israel, your people, and over Jerusalem. We're on page 38. Again, we're going to remember that it's Shabbat. We have Vishamru, verses from the book of Exodus, recounting the importance of Shabbat for the Jewish people. And the choir is going to lead us. Top of page 38, Vishamru. We're on page 40 with Chatzi Kaddish. And as it's the high holiday season, we add 2 extra words towards the end. Ula'e mikol, and that will continue in all the Kaddishes through the high holiday season. Kaddish Shalem, Chatzi Kaddish, and of course, Mourner's Kaddish. After we have the Kaddish, we'll be moving into the Amidah. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah, b'yalma divrach hiruteh, b'yamlik malchuteh, b'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayedecho beit Yisrael, b'agala v'zman kari v'yemru, Amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevorach, le'olam u'lo me'almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitale v'yitalal shmei dekutsha brichu le'ela u'le'ela mikol birchata b'shirata tush b'chata v'nechamata tamiran b'alma v'yemru Amen. We are at Tefillah, the Amidah, and it starts on page 42, and we're going to chant this evening using our traditional nusach, the traditional tune that we all know, pages 42, 44, and 46. And then after 46, we're going to continue silently through the end of the Amidah, and you'll find, and the end of the Amidah is, of course, the prayer for peace on page 70. And you can read the Hebrew, you can read the English, you could offer up your own prayer at this time. But we're going to begin together on page 42, and I'll ask those who wish, please rise. Adonai sifatai tiftachu fi yagita hilatecha. Adonai sifatai tiftachu fi yagita hilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avoteinu v'Imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak v'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel v'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor V'Hanorah El Elyon, Gomer Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei HaKol, V'Zocher Chastei Avot V'Imahot, U'Mevir Goel Livnei V'neihem, Leman Shemo B'Ahava. Melech Ozer u'Moshia u'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham v'Ezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechayei Metim Atarab Lehoshia, Morid Hatal. Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed, Mechayei Metim Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim Verofech Cholim, Umatir Hasurim, Umekayei Emunato, Lishenei Afar, Michalocha al Givorot, Umido Melach, Melech Meinit Umechayeh, Umatzmiach Yeshua. Michamocha el harachamim, Zocher Yitzurav, L'chaim berachamim. V'ne'eman atal hachayot meitim, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayei hametim. If you're still praying the Amidah, please continue at your own pace. We're going to turn back to page 49 and we'll read together in English. You are holy, your name is holy. Seekers of holiness praise you day by day, Selah. And so in your holiness, give all creation the gift of awe. Turn our fear to reverence. Let us be witnesses of wonder, perceiving all nature as a prayer come alive. We bow to the sovereignty of your strength, the primacy of your power. We yearn for connection with all that lives, doing your will with wholeness of heart. Awe-inspiring is your creation, all-encompassing your transcendent name. Let's turn ahead to page 52, and we'll read the English on this page together, and the choir will chant the ending bracha. You and you alone, Adonai, will reign over creation, upon Mount Zion, home of your presence, and in Jerusalem, a city set apart by you, as the psalmist believed, Adonai will reign eternally, your God, Zion, for all generations. Hallelujah. You are holy, your name is awe. There is nothing divine beyond you. As the prophet Isaiah taught, the source of all might is exalted through justice, the God of holiness made holy through righteousness. Let's turn the page to 54. And at the bottom, let's read Yale v'Yavo together. Our God and God of the generations before us, may a memory of us ascend and come before you. May it be heard and seen by you, winning your favor and reaching your awareness. Together with the memory of our ancestors, the memory of your sacred city, Jerusalem, and the memory of your people, the family of Israel, may we be remembered for safety, well-being, and favor, for love and compassion, for life and for peace on this day of remembrance. And on page 55, I'm going to read the Hebrew, and when I reach the end of the line, just recite Amen. Zochreinu Adonai Eloheinu bo l'tova.
Amen.
Ufochtenu vo livracha.
Amen.
V'hoshienu vo l'chaim. Eternal our God, remember us, be mindful of us, and redeem us for a life of goodness and blessing. Let's turn to page 58. Page 58, and let's read the middle in English. God, who is ours and God of our fathers and mothers, may our rest on this Shabbat bring you pleasure. Lead us to holiness through your mitzvot, and may each of us find a portion of Torah that is our own. You bestow such goodness, teach us to be satisfied, and let to know the joy of your salvation. Let your holy Shabbat be our heritage, embraced freely and with love, and may all our people bring holiness to your name by resting on this day. Help us to serve you truly with purity of heart, for you are a faithful God whose truth stands forever. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Baruch atah Adonai Melech al kol haaretz mekadesh ha-Shabbat. Melech al kol haaretz mekadesh ha-Shabbat. Melech al kol haaretz mekadesh ha-Shabbat v'Yisrael v'yom hazikaron. Our praise to Eternal One, whose power pervades all the earth. You bring holiness to Shabbat, to the people Israel, and to this day of remembrance. We are on page 60, as the choir will lead us, Ritzay.
Ritzay Adonai Eloheinu Be'amika Israel U'tifiratam Ba'yava Tikamel
Baruch atah Adonai hamachazir shchinato l'tzion. Page 62, we're at Modim Anach Lulach, and it's all about gratitude at this part of the Amidah. And as we enter into the new year, we should enter in with a sense, with an attitude of gratitude. We have a new year unfolding before us, new experiences, and new opportunities. We're grateful. We're thankful for the past. We're blessed to have the present, and we look forward to the future. Let's read together in the middle of page 62. God, who is ours, God of all generations, to you we are grateful forever. Rock and protector of our lives, your saving power endures from age to age. We thank you and tell the tale of your praise, your power in our lives, your caring for our souls, the constant miracle of your kindness. Morning, noon, and night, we call your goodness, for your compassion never ends. We call your mercy, for your love has no limit. We call you hope, now and for all time. And let's turn to page 64, and we'll continue. Let's read responsively. And for these gifts, God of majesty, may your name come to be blessed and praised. Our gratitude, a daily offering until the end of time.
Inscribe your covenant partners for a life of goodness.
And may all life resound with gratitude and faith in praise of your name, God, you free us and strengthen us. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha ulecha na'el lahodot. Blessed are you, Adonai, whose goodness deserves thanks and praise. Every major prayer in Judaism ends with a plea for peace. And we are on page 66, and we'll have the choir and Tam lead us in Shalom Rav. We're going to jump ahead to page 74. Normally when Yantif, Yom Tov, when a holiday falls on Shabbat, we don't recite Avinu Malkeinu. Part of it is, one of the reasons is on Shabbat, we tend not to ask God for things. We spend Shabbat being grateful. We spend Shabbat adopting an attitude of gratitude. And Avinu Malkeinu asks for many things. But I think this year, more so than any other year before, we can bend the rules a little bit and have Avinu Malkeinu, which is an amazing prayer. It comes to us from, the idea of Avinu Malkeinu comes to us from the Talmud. And it presents God in an interesting paradox. God is both parent, Avinu, our father, our parent, and Malkeinu, a sovereign, a ruler. One who gives life, our parent, and one who judges, the ruler. And during the high holidays, beginning with Rosh Hashanah, we understand both aspects, God as parent and God as ruler. And during the high holidays, both aspects of God, Avinu and Malkeinu, Av and Melech, are close to us. And so this evening, I would like to read the Hebrew and then have you respond with the English, pages 76 and 77. And I'm going to open the ark as is customary, and I'll ask those who feel comfortable to please rise. Avinu Malkeinu ein lanu melech il ata.
Avinu Malkeinu, Almighty and merciful, you alone are sovereign.
Avinu Malkeinu Lamancha Rachem Aleinu.
Avinu Malkeinu, for your sake, show us mercy.
Avinu Malkeinu Aseh Imanu Laman Shemecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, act towards us as befits your name.
Avinu Malkeinu Shalach Refuah Shlema L'Cholei Amecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, bring healing and wholeness to the ill among us.
Avinu Malkeinu Kira Roa Gazar Dinenu.
Avinu Malkeinu, align the harshness of the decree against us.
Avinu Malkeinu Kodvenu B'Sefer Geula V'Yeshua.
Avinu Malkeinu, inscribe us in the book of redemption and renewal.
Avinu Malkeinu Zochrenu Bizcharon Tov Lefanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, remember our goodness and call it to mind.
Avinu Malkeinu Aseh Lamancha V'Hoshienu.
Avinu Malkeinu, act for us to save us.
Avinu Malkeinu Shema Kolenu.
Avinu Malkeinu, almighty and merciful, hear our voice.
Avinu Malkeinu Chatanu Lefanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, we have strayed and sinned before you.
Avinu Malkeinu Chamol Aleinu Va'al Ol Aleinu V'Tapenu.
Avinu Malkeinu, have compassion on us and our families.
Avinu Malkeinu Kalei Deber V'Cherev V'Ra'av Me'aleinu.
Avinu Malkeinu, halt the onslaught of sickness, violence, and hunger.
Avinu Malkeinu Kalei Kol Tsar Umastin Me'aleinu.
Avinu Malkeinu, halt the reign of those who cause pain and terror.
Avinu Malkeinu Kotvenu B'Sefer Chaim Tovim.
Avinu Malkeinu, enter our names in the book of lives well lived.
Avinu Malkeinu Chadesh Aleinu Shana Tova.
Avinu Malkeinu, renew us for a year of goodness.
And the choir will close us out with the last lines.
Avinu Malkeinu, Shema Kolenu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chatanu lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu, Chom aleinu, ve'aleinu, v'tapopenu. Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu,
Avinu Malkeinu, Chonenu, Vanenu, Ki Ein Banu Ma'asim, Aseh Imanu Tzedakah, V'Chesed, V'Hoshienu. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Good Shabbos and Shana Tova. I'm blessed to be here with you this Erev Rosh Hashanah, albeit virtually. We have a brand new year ahead of us, full of promise and potential, and I look forward to spending it with you. The history of Judaism is great with storytellers. And perhaps the most famous and revered of these storytellers was the Maggid of Dubnov. He was more than any other single person responsible for the revival of storytelling, which served as the heartbeat of the early Hasidic movement. One time, one of his students asked how he always managed to find the perfect story for every situation. He responded, of course, with a story. Once he said, I was in a town with a renowned archer. I went to his house because I wanted to witness firsthand his legendary skill with the bow and arrow. When I got there, I was amazed at what I saw. On the side of his barn were painted 100 targets, and in every center of each one was an arrow. 100 perfect bull's eyes. Extraordinary. How could any person have such skill, such accuracy? I knocked on the door of his house, and when the man came out, I asked him, Sir, how did you get to be such a perfect marksman? It was easy, he said. The trick is to shoot the arrow first and then draw the target around it. That's the thing about a story, the Maggid taught. If you know how to use it, it can't miss. Clearly, the Maggid had a sense of humor and maybe more than a bit of self-awareness, but he knew something about stories. He knew that stories would find their mark. He knew that stories often reach us when other words might not. He knew that stories have an accuracy, a truth that more often than not hits home. This year, at this service, I'd like to try something new. Actually, no matter what I do, since this is my first year with you, it's going to be new. I've never given a sermon on Erev Rosh Hashanah. I've sensed that the time really wasn't right for a sermon. We're just settling in and easing our way into the high holidays. And this isn't the time for a long talk with a big idea. I think this may be the time for something that speaks not to our brains, but to our souls. Jews have long believed in the power of a story, in the idea that very often a truth is better contained in a tale than in a lecture. A story can teach something to adults as well as to children in a way that may be well remembered long after a beautiful sermon is forgotten. There will be time for sermons. Trust me, there will be plenty of time. But for now, I'd like to begin my new tradition and tell you a story. It's a story that I'm sure some of you have heard before because it's one of Judaism's most famous tales. It's a story about a rock. And it's not just about any rock, you understand. It's about what must be the most important rock in the world. It's the rock upon which the temple in Jerusalem was built, the place to which for generations upon generations, Jews came to offer their sacrifices and to celebrate the festivals. However, that place that rock was known to be important, was known to be sacred well before the temple stood there. It was the place, we are told, from which God took clay to form the first people. And that stone was the altar used for the first sacrifices by Cain, Abel, and then Noah. It was the place where Abraham bound Isaac, ready to sacrifice his beloved son to God. It was the place where some of the earliest Christians came for pilgrimage. That was the place, our Muslim cousins tell us, where Muhammad stood and then took flight to heaven. It is a place that has seen more holiness, more reaching for God than any other address in the history of the world. The rabbis refer to it as the navel, the belly button of the world. And that sounds a little funny, but I think what they meant it was that this was a place by which our world was directly connected to God and through which we received life from God. And this story? This is the story about how that rock came to be so important. This is the story about how God chose that particular rock to be our most sacred place in the entire world. And the story begins with two brothers. These two brothers lived long, long ago in what we would now call the land of Israel. But this was well before Israel was even a dream. Then it was just a hilly, beautiful land, perfect for farming or grazing your sheep. The two brothers grew up in this land as close as brothers can be. They worked their family's farmland together. They tended their flocks together. They spent the long hours of the hot day playing music or making up tales together. Always together. But as we know, such things, they can't last. The two brothers grew up, as all boys do, and eventually started lives of their own. One of the brothers was lucky enough to find his soulmate, a woman who would be his Ezer Kenegdo, his helpmate, his counterpart, all the days of his life. Together, they were a family, and with time and God's blessing, they added many children to their family. Their house was always filled with sounds of children laughing, playing, and even on the rare occasion, getting into a bit of trouble. It was filled with the sounds of life. The other brother led a different kind of life. He also found a wife, someone with whom he could share his life. And like his brother's family, they were very much in love. But for reasons no one could ever explain, they weren't blessed with children. At first, they suffered because of this. Their tiny family felt inadequate, especially in light of the joyous noise always emanating from his brother's home. But in time, they found peace with their own version of family. Peace, contentment, and ultimately, even joy. They love spending quiet evenings together, watching the sun set over the beautiful hills. They love strolling around their property, taking in the peaceful quiet of their little corner of the world. They love the life which God had given them. But one constant remained with these two brothers, their love for each other. When they decided to build their own homes, they wanted their families to remain close, so they decided to build their homes on opposite sides of a hill. This way, they could each have their own home, yet never be far from the other. Dinners would be shared, holidays would be celebrated, lives would be lived together. And so it was. The brothers became two families, but grew closer. One year, many years later, these two farming brothers found themselves in a most unusual problem. You see, nature had been extraordinarily kind to them and to all farmers that year. The rain had fallen in just the right amount, at just the right times, all season long. The sun shone whenever it wasn't raining. The winds were always mild, but just strong enough to keep the bugs from settling on the plants. It was as if God had decided to show humankind how perfect crops could grow if everything aligned at just the right time. And so both brothers found themselves with more wheat in the field than they had ever seen before, more than they knew what to do with. The first brother, the one with many children, looked out at his field, at the endless rows of wheat, and turned to his wife and said, "As wonderful as this is, I feel bad for my brother. We have so many children to help us. I know that I won't have to gather the harvest alone. I can't imagine having to do all this work without others there to lend a hand. You know what I want to do? Tonight, after we've collected the first of this year's harvest, I'm going to take a bag of grain and I'm going to take it to my brother's house. I'll have to do it at night and in secret because he would never accept this gift from me if he knew about it. He's far too generous for that. But maybe if he thinks the grain was a gift from God, he'll accept it in happiness and not have to work so hard at his own harvest." What this brother didn't know was that at that exact moment, his brother was looking out at his own field with its endless rows of wheat. He turned to his wife and said, "As wonderful as this is, it makes me feel bad for my brother. He has so many children, and he has to feed them all. I can go out and harvest just as much as I want. I'll have enough to feed us and plenty to sell at the market. But he might work all day, every day, all season long, and barely have any left over to sell. How can he support his family that way? You know what I want to do? Tonight, after we've collected the first harvest of the year, I'm going to take a bag of grain and I'm going to take it to my brother's house. I'll have to do it at night and in secret because he would never accept this gift from me if he knew about it. He's far too generous for that. But maybe if he thinks the grain was a gift from God, he'll accept it in happiness and not work so hard at his own harvest." Both brothers were true to their word. Each one spent the day harvesting in the field, and each one set aside a bag of the choicest grains for his brother. That night, under the cover of darkness, each one took his bag and sneaked up over the hill. There was no moon out that night, and neither could see more than a few feet in front of himself. So they didn't know when they passed right by each other. Each one quietly approached the other's house. Each one quietly left the bag of grain in the storehouse, and each one sneaked back to his own home, not noticing his brother as he passed him, yet again in the moonless night. The next morning, each brother woke up and went to his storehouse to get ready for another day in the field. And each was shocked, I tell you, to see that they had an extra bag of grain. Had they dreamt the whole thing last night? Had they forgotten to deliver the grain? Of course not. There could be only one explanation. God had rewarded them. As a show of appreciation for their generosity, God had granted each one an extra bag of grain. And of course, immediately, each brother had exactly the same thought. I can't benefit from this. What I did was out of love for my brother. He should benefit from this. Therefore, I'm going to give him this bag. And so that night, the drama played out one more time, each brother carrying a bag of grain over the hill, not seeing his brother doing exactly the same thing, and then leaving the bag for his brother and his family. And as you can probably guess, this didn't just happen one more time. Each and every morning, the brothers would awake, see the restored grain, and repeat their vow one more time. This went on night after night until finally there was a full moon. That night, the same scene began to play out one more time. Each brother loaded up a bag with the best of their yield. Each made their way in silence over the hill, intending to bring this offering to his brother. But this time, both men reached the top of the hill at the same moment, and in the light of the full moon, each one saw the other. They stood there in shocked silence, each trying to understand what was going on. And then they knew. Each man realized what was happening. A smile spread across their faces as they understood that the bag, which seemed to appear as if by magic every morning, hadn't come from God, but rather from his brother, who had been doing exactly the same thing all this time. Without a word, each man dropped his bag where he stood and stepped towards his brother. And then these two brothers, these two friends, embraced. They stood there hugging, shedding gentle tears of joy and thankfulness until sunrise. And as the sun climbed in the sky, God looked down and took in the scene. And then God said, "This is the spot. This shall be my home, the house of my prayer." And so it was. And so it ever shall be. Shana Tova, everyone. A year of blessing and good things for us all. We are on page, believe it or not, page 79. And it's the introduction or the beginning of Kiddush, the blessing over the wine. And this evening it's for Shabbat and for the festival, not the festival, for Rosh Hashanah. And so I'll ask everyone who can to and feels comfortable to please stand. And we're at the top of page 79. Vayehi Erev, Vayehi Vocher, Yom HaShishi, Vayechulu Hashamayim v'Haaretz, v'chol tzivam, Vayechal Elohim bayom hashvihi, melachto asher asa, Vayishbot bayom hashvihi, mikol melachto asher asa. Vayivarech Elohim et yom hashivi'i, vayikadesh oto, kivo shavat mikol melachto, asher bara Elohim la'asot. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam, borei pri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam, asher bachar banu mikol am, v'romemanu mikol lashon, v'kidishanu b'mitzvotav. V'titin lanu Adonai Eloheinu bi'ahava, et yom hashabat hazeh, v'et yom hazikaron hazeh, Yom Zikron Truat Bi'ahava, Mikra Kodesh Seker Litziat Mitzrayim, Kivanu Vacharta, V'otanu Kidashta Mikol Ha'amim, Udvarecha Emet V'kayam La'ad, Baruch Ata Adonai, Melech Al Kol Ha'aretz, Mikadesh HaShabbat, Melech al kol haaretz, Mekadesh HaShabbat, Melech al kol haaretz, Mekadesh HaShabbat v'Yisrael, v'yom hazikaron. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam, shehechianu v'kiyamanu, v'higianu lazman hazeh. Ask people to remain standing. We are on page 82. Page 82. It's Aleinu. And Aleinu has a special connection to the high holidays. Originally, we believe it was composed for the Rosh Hashanah Musaf service, and it was only chanted during this time of year. But in the Middle Ages, it became part of the daily service, especially in the Ashkenaz regions, Northern and Eastern Europe. And it's made up of two distinct paragraphs. One, where it talks about the distinctiveness of the Jewish people and our unique faith in God. And then the second paragraph is a more universalist hope that one day God will be worshiped by all humanity. And so it's a very important prayer for us. And we are on page 82. Aleinu l'shapeach l'adon hakol, lateit gedula liotzer reshit, shelo asanu k'goyei haratzot, v'lo samanu k'mishpachot hadama, shelo sam chelkeinu kahem, v'gor aleinu kechol amonam. Vanachnu korim umishtachavim umodim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu shehu noteh shamayim v'yoser haaretz umoshev yikaro b'shamayim imav Ushrinatu zo, begov hei meromim, hu Eloheinu einod, emet molkeinu efes ulato, kakatu v'torato, v'yadata hayom v'hashevota, El Elvavecha, Ki Adonai Hu Elohim, Bashamayim Nimal, V'Haaretz, V'Haaretz, V'Tachat Einod. And on the top of page 84, let's read together. And so, Adonai, our God, we look to you, hoping soon to behold the splendor of your power revealed, a world free of idolatry and false gods, a world growing more perfect through divine governance, a world in which all human beings make known your name, while those who do evil turn toward you. As the prophet announced, the Eternal shall be sovereign over all the earth. On that day, the Eternal shall be one, and God's name shall be one. As we move towards the conclusion of our service this evening, we're going to read responsively Psalm 27. It's not in the Machzor in full, but we'll read it here for everyone. The Psalm of David, the Lord is my light and my help, whom shall I fear?
The Lord is the strength of my life, whom shall I dread?
When evildoers draw near to slander me, when foes threaten, they stumble and fall.
Though armies be arrayed against me, I have no fear.
Though wars threaten, I remain steadfast in my faith.
One thing I ask of the Lord, for this I yearn, to dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold his beauty, to pray in his sanctuary.
God will hide me in God's shrine, safe from peril. God will shelter me beyond the reach of disaster.
He will raise my head above my enemies. I will bring him offerings with shouts of joy, singing, chanting praise to the Lord.
O Lord, hear my voice when I call. Be gracious to me and answer.
Is that you that I seek, says my heart? It is your presence that I seek, O Lord.
Hide not from me, reject not your servant.
You have always been my help. Do not abandon me. Forsake me not, my God of deliverance.
Though my father and my mother leave me, the Lord will care for me.
Teach me your way, O Lord. Guide me in the right path to confound my oppressors.
Abandon me not to the will of my foes.
False witnesses have risen against me, people who breathe out lies.
Mine is the faith that I surely shall see the Lord's goodness in the land of the living.
Hope in the Lord and be strong. Take courage. Hope in the Lord.
Le'ulehem anti lerot betuv Adonai be'eretz chaim. Kaveh el Adonai. Chazak v'yametz libecha. V'kaveh el Adonai. This week, we observed the following yard sites: Bess Levine, Marilyn Cohen's mother; Helen Rose, Harold Rose's mother; Michael Schwabnetz, husband to Susan; Dr. David Weinsweg; Jane Jackson, Clarence's wife; Minnie Jacobs, Richard and Linda Kuntz's grandmother, Layla's mother; Rowena Pickholtz, wife of Bob Pickholtz, Linda Klein's stepmother; Hal Schiff, Rena's uncle; Gusty Billig, Ernst Billig's mother; Rebecca Strauss, relative of Harold; Lloyd Max Armster, friend or relative of Gloria Mazo; Herman Brodoff, Mark's father; Anna Gottlieb, Jack Gottlieb's mother; Elsa Simon Landau; Max Shrinsky; Barrett Skoll, husband to Elaine, father to Rhonda and Diane; Dora Cohen Mayer, friend or relative of Jane Glick; Samuel Jason, relative of Meyer Jason; Robert Pickholtz, Linda Klein's father; Nettie Supowitz, Lynn Mayer's aunt. May their souls be bound up in the bond of life eternal. May their memories be a blessing to us always, and may they all rest in peace. We are on page 90, Mourner's Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, be'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlik malchutei, b'chaye chon u'biomei chon u'v'chaye dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevorach li'olam olamei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal shmei dekusha brichu. Le'ela ule'ela mikol birchata v'shirata. Tush b'chata v'nechamata da'amiran bi'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya. V'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, Hu Ya'aseh Shalom Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'al Kol Yoshvei Tevel V'imru. Amen. May the source of peace bestow peace on all who mourn, and may we be a source of comfort to all who are bereaved. And we all say, Amen. Choir will close us out.
Say shalom, shalom b'brama, uyaseh shalom aleinu, ve'akol Yisrael b'imru amen. Say shalom, shalom b'brama, uyaseh shalom aleinu, ve'akol Yisrael b'imru amen. Uyaseh shalom aleinu, ve'akol Yisrael amen. Say shalom, shalom b'brama, uyaseh shalom aleinu, ve'akol Yisrael b'imru amen. Ve'akol Yisrael
Well, friends, that brings us to the end of our Rosh Hashanah service for this evening. Just a couple of announcements. Service is tomorrow at 10 a.m. And on for second day, where we're not having services, you'll be able to go onto YouTube and you'll see the Torah reading recorded and the Haftarah, as well as a sermon from me, but that will be all for Sunday. And then Sunday at 3 p.m., we're going to gather those of us who feel comfortable. We're going to meet at Ritter Park at the fountain, by the fountain, for the shofar sounding and tashlich, where we symbolically cast away our sins. And if you can't make it or don't feel comfortable being outside or among people, you'll be able to tune in via Zoom, and you should have gotten a link from Martha for that Zoom for Sunday. And I want to give some thanks to Sam and to James, to Scott, and to Kevin Bannon for their technical expertise in bringing our services to you this evening. I know we had that glitch at the beginning, but with all new technology, all new ways of doing things, if there's not a glitch at the beginning, it'll happen in the middle, and I would rather have it at the beginning. And so it's smooth sailing from now on. I want to thank Judy and the choir for their lovely music this evening. And I want to say thank you to all of you who tune in week after week and who are supporting us by participating with us and giving us feedback and just being members of our congregation and our community. And so I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom, a good Shabbos, and a Shana Tova Umetuka, a happy new year, a sweet new year, one that is filled with blessings and good things. We'll see you soon.